All right, welcome everyone. We are sort of doing a little test today. We're going to go live on YouTube and on Twitter. So if you are joining us on either platform, thank you for coming. Um, we are just going to talk a little bit about today about everything that's happened, I guess, in the last week, 2 weeks in Senators land. Nick, how's it going so far? And how's your September going? We're already halfway through somehow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think we're, just a couple of weeks out from the preseason, really. We got rookie camp coming up this weekend. It's finally starting to feel like hockey's back.
It really does feel pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, and so we don't have a ton to talk about, but we'll stir up the pot and figure out some things to touch on just for the people who end up tuning in here. So we'll talk first about Tim Stutzla. I think that was about a week ago, just exactly a week ago. It sounds like. Um, what were your thoughts, I guess, initially on Tim Stutzla joining the team for the next 9 years and kind of staying and having that 9 year or 8 year extension, sorry, to keep him here for 9 more years.
Well, how can that one not bring a smile to your face, really? We've talked about it 100 times on the show. It feels like just yesterday, the biggest Senators problem was the fact that they couldn't retain any personnel. And now look at it. They've got the entire core locked up on long-term deals. Tim Stutzla is an Ottawa Senator for 9 more years. I mean, that just sounds incredible. It is incredible. And I think from other markets, there were quite a few eyebrows raised at the term and dollar in the deal. But as fans who have watched him progress, especially over the past second half of the season last year, I like this deal. Just looks like it's going to be a steal, perhaps as soon as next year.
Yeah, the best part about it, I think, is just the fact that it's kind of the cherry on top to the off season. I think that's what I like most about it. Um, I just have a question, I guess, about it for you, and I'm curious because I don't really know my own answer. How do you feel that he's going to be the highest paid player on the team next year? And we can talk about highest paid in Senators history, but I think that kind of goes without saying. It's you know well into the future. I think Danny Heatley. Someone pointed out to me. I mentioned that on Twitter, but someone pointed out to me that one season Danny Heatley made 10 million in real salary. I think the year they went to the finals or the year after, maybe. But technically, uh, Shabbat had the richest contract in Sens history. Then Kachuk's was the richest in terms of annual value, and now Tim Stussel will take that cake. He has the most expensive and the highest annual value. So, what are your thoughts on him being a highest paid player? Because I think right now, for me anyway, I don't know if he's concretely the best forward they have, especially now with DeBrincat and Giroux in the fold. But I think you can make the argument towards the end of last year he was their best player. So, what are your thoughts on him being the highest paid?
Yeah, it's hard to say right now that he is their best forward. I mean, like you just said, they brought in Claude Giroux and Alex DeBrincat, who are two premier NHL forwards just in this past offseason. You've already got a team with Batherson, Kachuk, and Norris on it. But just in terms of pure talent and pure his ceiling in general, it's you can very easily make the debate that his is by far the highest out of any individual they've brought up through the organization internally, and perhaps higher than that of either DeBrincat or 35-year-old Claude Giroux, who is still a very valuable piece. But Tim Stutzla, they've signed him up pretty much throughout his entire 20s now, and you're going to get the absolute best years out of him. I think a few years ago, people would have just assumed the NHL prime was sort of thought to be around 26, 27 years old and then on. A lot of math shows now it's sort of a lot younger. It's around your 23 year, and then between that and 27. So to have him just locked up, confirmed as part of this team for that stretch is absolutely massive. And, from that point of view and how the league's changed from that perspective, I think it's very easy to sell at least myself and a lot of other people, on him being the highest paid Ottawa Senator of all time.
I agree. I think it's really nice that it's kind of poetic, right? He was the culmination, I feel like, of the rebuild and of everything that the team went through and all the rigors we went through as fans. It was a long road, I think, and the fact that he capped off the offseason with his extension in a pretty unique fashion, I think, too, with the whole I wasn't fan fest. I don't really know what the title of it was, but more of a media introduction to the season and to all the players that they've acquired. They had to bring it up on stage, and they had some members of Twitter there who got to experience kind of a media experience, which was kind of nice to see. And at the end of it, Dorion just brings Stutzla on stage and says, "How does 8 more years feel?" And it's just kind of a
It's
cathartic
great
moment. I
theater.
think it really is, and it's kind of a fun way to announce an extension, I think, and it reminds me a lot of the way they announced Brady Tkachuk last year, kind of just bringing him out into the crowd last year at the home opener. So we'll transition out of Tim Stutzla and talk about a signing they actually made today. Kind of nice. We were planning on doing this tonight anyway, and then they dropped the news on us that they signed Tyler Mott to a 1 year, 1.5 million or 1.35 million, sorry, deal, not a PTO, which is strange at this point in the year. There's a lot of professional tryouts being handed out, and not this one. Tyler Mott is a one-way, 1 year deal. How do you feel about it? Like, are you shocked? Are you surprised? Are you questioning it at all?
I was pretty surprised just that there was another ad at forward, but I think Tyler Mott's a really good piece. I think he's strong defensively. He kills penalties really well. And for me, those are two things you can never have enough of in the bottom six. I think I tweeted about it right after. Just, the bottom six has hampered the Senators for a long time now. And just continuing to add players that are quite simply just quality NHLers in the bottom 6 year lineup to compete for ice time there, I think is a positive. I'll describe how I first saw it. You can agree or disagree with me. We both, a couple months ago in our sort of off-season preview, we're both saying that we felt that Connor Brown should stick around for this season, despite
Yeah.
his contract status being in limbo. Obviously, they went on and dealt him to the Capitals for a second-round pick, but I sort of felt the one thing that they needed to do, at least, was he was playing as a top six forward from the past 2 years, as well as being a first unit penalty killer. The Senators obviously now went out. They brought in Claude Giroux, Alex DeBrincat, so they've solidified that spot in the top six and greatly improved upon it. And now I think with a piece like Connor Brown, not Connor Brown, Tyler Mott, to replace Connor Brown, who generates a lot of 4v5 offense and is a great penalty killer, very tenacious. I think they've effectively replaced Connor Brown's usage in both situations, and the team's improved as a result of it. That's really how I saw it at first.
That's a good way to put it. I didn't even really kind of make the Connor Brown connection, but if he's at face value a cheaper and more bottom 6E kind of Connor Brown, then that's pretty good, because I think Connor Brown was capped out at really good third line and mid second line kind of player. And I think I was kind of the same. I was surprised about Tyler Mott, but at the same time, I wasn't exactly. I, I was surprised in a good way. I think that's the best way to put it. I think he's, like you said, a very good player. He was effective for the Rangers in the playoffs last year. He came over at the deadline from the Canucks, and a lot of fans. I mean, it's always a good sign when your fans are not happy that they lost a player to the Sens, right? And that's one of these scenarios where Tyler Mott seems like a good piece. So
Very popular in Vancouver.
yeah, exactly. He's very popular in Vancouver, and I think Vancouver. I mean, you could say he was popular because there were a lot of other guys to hate, but I think that goes to show a lot. And two big fan bases, the Rangers and the Canucks, not known for being overly positive. Those two fan bases, I feel like, and if he's a fan favorite there, then he should thrive here. My question is, where does he fit? I mean, there's obviously we both know that Alex Formanton's question mark is still a thing, but would you put him on that third line, or do you rotate him on a fourth line?
I'd still think the third line is probably a bit too high in the batting order for me for a player like Tyler Mott. I think we're all sort of hoping if Alex Formanton is not on this team next year, that Ridley Gregg comes in, has a great camp, and takes that spot. I think that's the ideal outcome. And the way I looked at it with this deal, because the one way, because he's making $1.4 million, just about. I don't think the Senators. I think a lot of people, first off, were sort of assuming he'd rotate in with games for Kelly and Kastelik and Watson and Gambrell and sort of just be part of that configuration. Just based on the fact that they went out and signed him, I don't think that the Senators brought him in to sit as a 13th forward a lot of nights. I think the fact that this isn't a PTO and they didn't want to see how he lined up against these players first and foremost. I think the fact that it is a straight contract and they're bringing him in on a 1 year deal, probably assumes that they had some sort of discussion with him over what his role would be. And I think just on that basis, it's going to be his to lose. I think as your fourth line left wing. I think that's what I'm penciling him in as right now. And then, the other two spots, it's going to be up to Kastelik, Kelly, Watson, and Gambrell to fight it out, out of training camp and every night. I think right now, though, just on the basis of it, it does push Kastelik, I would say, towards the bottom of that, which I don't think is the end of the world. He could probably use another good season in Belleville and, be a good call up down the road.
I agree, and I think we've seen Kelly, Gambrell, Watson, or Kelly, Kastelik, Watson as combinations on that fourth line. But based on what we're hearing about Mott and what we've heard from other fan bases and what I know about what I've seen, I don't think that he would fit in terribly on that line at all. And I think that rotation of 5 players for that fourth line is a pretty ideal scenario. But with Ridley Gregg having a good camp, let's say if Formanton is not present for the camp and it doesn't appear he will be, just based on the way things are shaping up at the moment. But we will touch on that another time. I'm a bit more curious, I guess, just to see if, let's say, Ridley Gregg isn't ready to play. Let's say, okay, we know he probably won't be playing in the rookie camp, just based on his shoulder injury from the World Juniors. He might get into a game here and there at the end of it. I think Troy Mann was on. I don't know if he was interviewed by Ian Mendez, actually. That's what it was today for the Athletic, and he had some comments just about like the stars who are kind of going to suit up. Like I think Jake Sanderson is going to play one game. I think I'm blanking on a name here. It might have been Ridley Gregg you was just talking about won't be in the lineup to start. So if he's not healthy and doesn't make the team, who on that fourth line do you think would be the best to kind of step into that third line left wing position that we were talking about?
Yeah, that one's pretty difficult to say because, obviously you'd prefer a player like Alex Formanton to be in there with, a close to 20 goals last year. And, Ridley Gregg also looks really good in the World Juniors this year. But, if neither of them for understandable reasons can be on the team come that time, it becomes a bit more the Senators bottom six really loses a bit of punch in that respect, right?
Yeah.
That's how it at least feels to me. Um, I think then you're sort of just really rotating guys into that spot. I don't think you can really set a player in that position. You just got to sort of rotate guys in and hope something clicks because you need, at least in my opinion, somebody who can continue to put the puck in the net or at least help drive play on that third line. And if it's not either of the two guys that we mentioned, it really remains to be seen who it can be.
That's a good point. I think also we should mention I don't think it's the end of the world. Let's say, right? Like this is still a very good forward core. They've assembled a very good group. They added more depth today at the end of the day. That's all that really is. So I'm going to talk about like just the top 6 for a quick second here because I was just on Twitter and there's some debate going on between some pretty big names on Twitter. Dom Leshugen, gonna try that there. That's his from the Athletic, a good analytics reporter, very great articles and stuff like that, and good insight on a lot of players in the league. He teased that he has the Ottawa forward group as a B- overall, and made a comment just now saying that he doesn't think that any of them are in the elite tier. Do you agree or disagree? I think he's got a franchise tier, an all-star tier, elite, and then top line. And I believe he's got all 6 of the top 6 in a top line group. So what do you agree with that? I disagree. But I mean, if it's numbers, we can't really argue with math.
Yeah, no, I think I disagree. Yeah, but then again, so much of this talent really hasn't hit the ice together again yet. I think Batherson, Kachuk, and Norris as a line were well on their way to being elite. I think they definitely got to improve their two-way play next year. And I think, just having secondary scorers behind them will sort of help that out, in my opinion. But again, that second line
Mhm.
of Tim Stutzla, Claude Giroux, and Alex DeBrincat. I mean, that can be one of the best lines in the NHL next year. That's no hyperbole.
No.
Um, right? Just on paper, it is just unbelievable to think of what that line can be. The way Tim Stutzla played at the end of last season, and with two quality players like Giroux and DeBrincat, I think by the end of next season, at least that line will be moving up, and the well-known first line for the Senators, if they continue their upwards trajectory, will undoubtedly be higher than a top line quality.
So it's kind of a loaded question, but would you rather have a let's look at a top six. I'm just thinking in terms of maybe Toronto. So let's say Toronto's got two superstars, and then they've got one all-star in Nylander, and then probably a top line player in Tavares, I think, based on what he showed last year. I wouldn't put him in all-star category. And then probably two mid players. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't put Kerfoot and Bunting in that category. Like, what I guess it really depends on the superstar aspect of it. Like, how much can those superstars carry you? Like, we already talked about it this summer, but like, would you rather have Toronto's on that basis? I'm not going to get angry that the Sens aren't rated as six elite players because I'm still happy with it. And if they're six top line guys and then they end up being the best top six forward group in the NHL, like quality over quantity is kind
Right.
of the way to go, I guess. Right.
Yeah, no, that's what I think. I think the Senators have six on paper very good forwards. I think that's a huge plus. Again, not a lot of teams in the league. It's no hyperbole can boast that. There aren't a lot of teams with six very good forwards. Toronto is also like they're one of them. They
Yeah.
have two, they have one generational superstar undoubtedly, and they have one high end, probably, in
A
most
franchise
market.
player.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
franchise player, Mitch Marner. That's a good tag for him, right? If he didn't play in Toronto and wasn't pretty vilified, I think we'd recognize Mitch Marner as a lot better of a player than he is. Despite the fact that I'm not a fan, I'm okay to say that.
Yeah.
Um, Again, those two types of players, you probably pick them easily over any of the Senators' six forwards just because that's what they are. They are very, very difficult to find, much more difficult to find than the pieces the Senators have. But again, it's hard to judge the Senators because they're still very much, in my opinion, trending upwards. Like, Tim Stutzla could eventually be that franchise player. We've
Yep.
talked about that before. I know you have mentioned a lot of times you think he'll be up in the Hart Trophy voting next year. Like, who's to say he won't be, right? Based on how he
Hey.
played at the end of last season. Alex
Yeah.
DeBrincat is a superstar in the NHL. Brady Tkachuk is only continuing to get better. It's really difficult to say because it just feels like the Sens are still at a different stage than the Maple Leafs players. But but we also have to see how the Senators team is when it hits the ice. It's still a little presumptive to say that the Senators group is better because it really hasn't played together yet. There was one tweet that made me laugh this week saying that the Senators had a better team than the Leafs now. I as somebody who lives in Toronto, I've been telling my friends that for years. I've been telling them, like, just wait, we're gonna have a better team than you. We're gonna go further. By the time we finish this rebuild, I've been making the same joke for years. I don't think I actually believe it, but again, let's see what happens when they hit the ice.
So this is actually a perfectly professional transition into the next thing we were going to talk about. We were going to predict the Atlantic Division, but just before we do that, because you mentioned Mitch Marner, I actually had a question that came up a little bit in the summer. Would you take Huberdeau or Marner?
I'd take Marner. I think I
Yeah.
would. I think I would take Marner. I think Marner offers just a bit more two-way if you look at the numbers in a little more depth. And um, if we're talking right now, too, I think just Marner's age profile gives him like a huge edge over Huberdeau
True.
because Marner's still got a lot to go. He's still got a long career left in this league, so I think I would go Marner, but
It's close.
I
It's
could definitely
close.
hear arguments for Huberdeau.
It really is. Yeah. And I think, I mean, it's like a 4-year age gap or 3-year, like it's not crazy, anything like that. Um, So I wanted to see where your head was at on that one. I think I'm the same way. I think it's hard to ignore Marner's age, and you can talk about defensive stats and all that. And I mean, I think Toronto's a very well structured team. Like,
Yeah.
it seems every player on their team is good defensively. And that's not the case. Like, you're naive to think that every single player is elite defensively, and especially on a team like the Leafs. So we'll transition that anyway into our Atlantic Division predictions. These are vital because the Senators need to make the playoffs this year, and someone needs to fall out, and people need to move around. So based on the offseason every team had, we'll kind of disregard teams like Montreal. The one team I think, or one of two teams in the East that are signaling that they're still rebuilding.
Not if you ask the players, apparently.
Yeah, who was it? Was Joel Edmondson,
Yeah.
right? Oh my God.
Apparently not. Apparently they're done with that. So that just gives me straight 2018 Ottawa Senators vibes. What a time that was.
But no one on the Sens came out in the media, and not even like Ottawa media is much different than Montreal media. I wonder, I would hope that the players are just like talking around and messing around and saying, hey, like, how funny would it be if I just said, yeah, the rebuild's over or something like that. Like they're pulling up Pierre Dorion from last year.
You got to hope that's the case, right?
Really do, because Montreal does not appear primed to make any kind of waves. If they had Price in that, I would maybe think, okay, maybe there's a chance they could go on a run, but he won't be suiting up this year. So anyway, what is your order for the division? And if you're going to specify, so once you get out of the top three, specify if you think 4 and 5 are going to be the wild card spots.
Sure. Sorry, just something, my computer freeze there. Sorry. Okay. For my Atlantic Division, I think Toronto's going to win the division this year. I think they're prime to. I think they aren't as good. Maybe in the very best case scenario, I think they're as good as they were last year.
Yeah.
I don't think Toronto improved over the offseason. They may have even got worse, but I think just the way that teams have sort of folded around them, I do think Toronto is still going to be the best team in the Atlantic Division next year. I think Florida took a massive step back, and I'll get to that. But
Yeah.
I think Toronto just, they took a slight step back, but it's not as big of a step back as the teams around them. So I think Toronto is going to win the division. I should preface this by saying I think the entire division is going to be a lot closer this year than it was. I think there's a lot more points up for grabs because, as I'll point out here, my top three teams in the division, I think each took a step back in their own way. Second is Tampa Bay. Again, they're going to downfall at some point in the near future over the next couple of years, but I still think they have enough talent that they'll just grind through the regular season like they always do, and they'll be a hard out in the playoffs. That's just the Tampa recipe. In third, I had a lot of trouble with this one, but I'm still going to put Florida just because I think they have the elite talent that still keeps them very high in the playoff race and puts them above other teams in this division. But again, they took a massive step back in the offseason. I think Matt Tkachuk is an outstanding player, but at least in the short term, giving up Huberdeau and Weegar is going to hurt. And I don't like Paul Maurice as a coach. I don't like what I think he's going to do to that team. I think sort of, the old staff was getting the absolute best out of some assets. And I saw something today and I hadn't really realized it. The left side of their defense right now.
I was just going to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's horrific. Terrible. It's what Montour,
Forsling is one of them.
and Lucas Carlson or something like that. Like it's horrific. It's way worse than I think most teams in the division, which is beyond surprising, but still enough elite talent for me. 4 is the Ottawa Senators. I think if Florida really takes a step back, which I am getting more of a feeling that they might, I think the Senators could even push into that 3 spot just because, again, there's going to be a lot more points up for grabs. And I think the Senators improved more than any other team in the division. And then just quick fire for the rest. 5, I'll go Boston because, again, I like Boston's team. I think they also had underratedly a good offseason, but the injuries to Pasternak and McAvoy and Marchand are a bit too much to ignore for me. And I think it's going to take them out of it early. And it may be a bit too hard to recover, but, watch them as the season goes on. And then Detroit 6, Buffalo 7. Again, both are taking good steps. Not there yet for me. And then 8 is Montreal. But I will say I don't think Montreal is going to be as bad as they were last season. I still think they have too many veterans that are going to try to win them some hockey games.
Yeah, I think that's we have the exact same list, which is kind of funny. except I put Ottawa in third. I'm a little lower on Florida. Yeah, so I was. So I'll go Leafs. I think Leafs. You're right. I think, honestly, like of the top teams, let's go to the top 3. I think in terms of who got worse, I think Florida got way worse. I think Toronto got the second most worse. I don't know if that makes any sense. And then Tampa kind of stayed the same, even though they did lose Palat and McDonough. Tampa's core and their structure and everything like that will stay mostly the same. So yeah, I have the Leafs coming first. The only wild, or I guess X factor, is obviously it's going to be Matt Murray. Um, you know, we know all too well you can't really rely on Matt Murray to save the day every now and then. And yes, the Leafs are a fantastic team and they had a really good season last year. They powered through some really subpar goaltending from Jack Campbell, but on the other side of the coin, they also got some very good goaltending from Jack Campbell. Like, they were in that Tampa series because of his goaltending. He battled Andre Vasilevsky for 7 games and they almost won, right? So I I will look. I'm not going to sit here and cheer against Matt Murray. I will be absolutely shocked if he goes back to his Pittsburgh form for whatever reason. I don't think anything. I think he was set up for absolute success in Ottawa. He had the crease. He was given every opportunity. And then the guys, I think, just got sick of him. I think that's kind of what happened. And they kind of swept it under the rug a little bit by getting rid of him this summer. So that'll be really intriguing to follow for me. And then I got Tampa second. I think you're right. Like, it's Tampa. You can't bet against them until there's a reason to. Um, I mean, I think the last time they missed the playoffs was because the Sens made it, though. So we'll see. Maybe this is the year that they take up Tampa's spot. And I got the Sens at 3 because I think you're right. I think it'll be way tighter than it was. I don't think every single team in the East is going to have 100 points. That's not realistic. It's not going to happen again. So I think if the Sens are in and around 100 points, I think 99, 98, not out of the question at all, I don't think, for this team. So I think the 3 spot is a very safe spot for them to be in. And then I got Florida in 4. I think Florida got way worse. And I think it kind of went under the radar after that blockbuster. They got fleeced. And then even before that, they lost Giroux, they lost Marchment, and then Duclair's out for like a long period of time. So their forwards, yes, Matthew Tkachuk, great player, but they got worse, and a new coach, like you said, in Paul Maurice, and I'm not sure how that's going to go. I think I'm a bit higher on Boston than I was at the beginning of the offseason. I really like Jim Montgomery. I think he's a really good coach. And I think he'll work really well with that core. The only thing is the injuries, obviously. I think Marchand and McAvoy are big losses to overcome, but Boston, like at face value, they got better because they got Krejci back, and then they got Bergeron as well. So I don't think Boston can be counted out. I really do think Florida is the one that will fall the most in terms of where they were last year. So a lot of points for the Sens to make up there, and then I've got Detroit, Buffalo, Montreal, like before. But again, Detroit is another team who could probably sneak in and make some headway. And it's really hard to answer those, the middle of the pack, right? Because then you go into wild card, you got to look at the Metro division, like what teams like are New Jersey and Columbus and all these other teams going to push for playoff spots as well. So I don't really know if we have much more. We were kind of using this as a test for our systems here, and we thank you for everyone who kind of tuned in here, and we'll be back. I think Derek kind of teased it a little bit. He went on Locked On Senators, and he talked about what the Future Sickos podcast is going to look like for the upcoming year. And I think he talked about it a little bit with Ross, and he said that you and I, Nick, are going to be doing pregame shows. We're going to try and do as many as we can for the season because we realized there was a bit of a gap in Sens content. There doesn't seem to be a pregame show, at least in the Twitter podcast sphere. So we're going to try and take control of those. And I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really fun. We'll aim for probably around half an hour every time, like a pretty similar to this. And it should be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff on the way. I think we're both really excited to get the season started. I think the entire Future Sickos team here is. We got a lot of fun stuff planned, and we hope we can share it all with you soon. I think I speak for all of us. We're very, very excited to get things going here in the next couple weeks.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.